Writers have always loved to define characters by their gender. It's at the core of many tropes and even archetypes. The hero was pretty much always a male for most of history, the damsel was a woman, the evil stepmother is self-explanatory, the Dark Lord was usually a dark dude. But let's be real, most of us are over characters being defined by gender. It makes them kind of boring, and in worst cases, annoying. But good news, it happens less than it used to. Many of these tropes and archetypes have become commonly gender neutral in the last 50 years, but some tropes still hold on to their gender like it's the only thing keeping them relevant. Or perhaps it's the defining trait of the trope, and the only reason it exists at all. One of the best known modern examples of a trope being defined by gender is, of course, the strong female character. A very divisive trope that has come under vicious scrutiny for a good part of the last decade, the strong female character has accrued a negative association, linked to civil war amongst audiences, division between the audience and critics, poor writing, and dying franchises. This trope has impacted characters on a wider scale. The strong female character, the SFC for short, has become almost synonymous with the badass female character, but they are not and have never been the same. A strong female character is always a badass, but a badass is not always a strong female character. However, the association remains, leading to people looking down on badass female characters because they equate them with the trope, or perhaps they are simply tired of many of the traits strong female characters have because they have been shoved into every corner of action-heavy genres. One of these traits, of course, being badassery. This also leads to YouTube videos discussing how writers should bring back gentle female characters, not because they're better than badass ones, but just to switch things up a bit. Heard this one was good. But then I rewatched season 1 of Blue Eye Samurai, and man, pun intended, Mizu is one of the best depictions of a female warrior I've ever come across. That's kind of a spoiler, but it's also revealed in the first episode and it's kind of obvious, so... She didn't reignite my love for badass female characters because it never died, but it did help me realize a lot of what's wrong with the strong female character trope, and what differentiates badass female characters from that trope. Mizu, the protagonist of Blue Eye Samurai, lives in 1600s Japan, a world that does not look kindly on women. She is a warrior that can defeat scores of armed men. She is independent, a bit arrogant, and doesn't exactly think too fondly of men. In modern entertainment, Mizu should be the embodiment of the strong female trope, and yet, she's not. She's an incredible depiction of a physically strong and skilled female character, a badass character cursed to be associated with the strong female trope, but is so much more. And while I'll dive deeper into why, there are two main reasons why she subverts this trope. One, her gender does not define her. And two, she works frickin' hard. The first part of this video will be my attempt at an in-depth analysis of the strong female character trope. The second part will be relating the trope to badass female characters, and specifically Mizu. This is gonna be a long video. Now for some disclaimers. This video is just my opinion. Feel free to try to change my mind in the comments or poke holes in my argument, because I'm sure there's at least 3. Also, I will be spoiling the crap out of Blue Eye Samurai, so if you care, try one of my other videos maybe. And as a side note disclaimer, I wanted to address that I know I use Captain Marvel as my main example of a strong female character trope. She's just like the strong female character for people who are fans of mainstream fantasy and sci-fi, at least in my opinion. Before we unsheathe this video, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy.
I will let you down.
Recently, I made a video about how I wish writers would create more gentle female characters in fiction, but especially fantasy and action-heavy genres. While I centered the video around gentle female characters, using Yuna from Final Fantasy X as my primary example, really the point is that I just want a more diverse range of characterizations. Female characters follow trends far more than male characters. Yeah, you've got the male character archetypes, but the only male-specific character trend I can think of in the last 10 years is the dumb guy who is dependent on the woman in his life. Basically, a dude in distress, but he won't get the girl and he is also kind of okay at fighting. Still, there are far more female tropes that have popped up in the last 10 years than male tropes. That video, I usually call it the Yuna video, spawned a lot of discussion about different topics that I glossed over or didn't cover at all, and I figured I'd make a follow-up at some point. I think a lot of people assumed I was trashing physically strong female characters. That definitely wasn't my intention, and I did try to make the distinction between characters like Captain Marvel and Vi, try, but I might not have done a good enough job. I also think a lot of people felt I was putting gentle female characters on a pedestal and was ignoring the fact that there are tropes tied to them. First, I don't think gentle female characters are inherently better. Second, every character can fit into a trope because every character has been written a million times. My point was that the gentle female character is rarer to find in modern Western entertainment. Another thing I didn't clarify. I'm Canadian, I'm writing from a Western perspective. I want to make something clear. I really enjoy physically strong female characters. I relate more to them and aspire to be like some of them. I simply wish characters were not defined by their gender. It's usually not all that interesting of a trait. All I want is a diverse range of characterizations where character work does not take a backseat to gender. So consider this video my defense, and also an exploration of physically strong female characters who are well written. Also, most of the comments were positive and constructive. I just think this is a topic we're talking about. I also think it's worth noting that while this topic can be tied to politics, I'm not coming at this from a political POV. I'm literally just a writing nerd who wants to talk about nerdy writing things. In the second part of this video, I'm going to be talking a lot about Blue Eye Samurai, so here's a quick synopsis for those who haven't seen it. Also, because this video will mostly be about Mizu, the synopsis will be on her part of the story. There are other major characters and plot lines. During the isolationist period of Japan, Mizu is born half-white, which means she is seen as a monster. Her and her mother are treated horribly, and after her mother is killed, Mizu vows to kill the only 4 white men in Japan, not knowing and honestly not really caring which one is her father. She spends years training and honing her sword skills, becoming a masterful warrior in the process. The show follows her on her quest for revenge, and slowly it consumes her and everyone she meets. It's not usually difficult to understand the intention behind a character. If it is, the writing needs work. Intentions could be building a character around a specific trait or theme, or perhaps presenting a message through them. This can be explicitly told through the story. Paul Atreides from Dune, for example, is explicitly a Christ figure as he is literally the messiah of a religion. It can also be implicit, something that isn't talked about in the story, something that's in the character's DNA that only the writer really interacts with, but the audience can still notice it. Frodo, Aragorn, and Gandalf, while not allegories, are all inspired by different aspects of Jesus Christ. Whether explicit or implicit, audiences will notice authorial intent. A character can be defined by many things, but they typically fall into these categories: setting, themes, plot, character work, and authorial intent. And those fall into 2 further categories: story and authorial intent. These 2 things are not the same and aren't always harmonious. There can be a dissonance between what the story defines a character by and what the writer defines them by. To bring back an example I used in my Yuna video, the trench scene from Wonder Woman perfectly demonstrates this. The authorial intent is to make the audience feel like Diana is risking her life when she emerges from the trenches, but the story makes it clear there isn't actually any risk. The writers want to define her by her selflessness, but she ends up coming across as self-righteous, because the story has made it clear she isn't actually in any danger. She's a nearly invulnerable immortal. What the writers intended for the character and the scene is not congruent with the character they wrote. Which brings me to the strong female character. Whether explicitly by the story or implicitly by the writers, the strong female character trope is defined by her gender. But what, pray tell, even is a strong female character? The strong female trope basically takes a woman and injects her with super soldier serum and NZT-48. Whether she actually has superpowers or not. She is arrogant and self-righteous, must be better than the men in her life, is good at pretty much everything and needs little to no training to hone her skills, has an arc that doesn't really result in any growth unless it's her awesomeness, and is all around annoying to watch. Now, even characters who fit into this trope aren't necessarily cookie cutter, but they are similar enough to identifiably be this trope. It's kind of what a trope is. But let's get definitive here, because there will be some differentiation between characters within the same trope. What exactly makes a strong female character? She is a Mary Sue. It might be weird to describe a trope by using another trope, but the strong female character is basically an action-focused Mary Sue. Mary Sue is a term originally used to describe characters in fanfiction that were used as wish fulfillment avatars for the author. So, these mostly female characters were ultra beautiful, unique in some way, a jack of all trades and master of all, extremely smart, and usually lacking any non-endearing character flaws. the male version of this does exist, sometimes referred to as a Marty stew, but that's not the focus of this video. Some debated, but it's almost always debatable due to the negative connotation of the trope, but common examples include Rey from the third Star Wars trilogy, Galadriel from The Rings of Power, Carol Danvers from Captain Marvel, Bella Swan from Twilight, and Wonder Woman from Wonder Woman. The Mary Sue is designed for other characters to be attracted to her appearance and her personality, even if she doesn't actually have a personality. The funny thing is, the modern strong female character is also designed this way, except it's not other characters the author wants to attract, it's the audience. This is what TV Trope says about the Mary Sue. What little personality a Mary Sue has isn't as important as how other characters react to it. No matter how shy or socially awkward Mary Sue is supposed to be, other characters will be inexplicably drawn to her. All of her ideas are brilliant, all of her jokes are funny, and all of her advice is spot on. People will trust her implicitly even more than they trust their families, significant others, or closest friends. Anyone who doesn't react to her this way is usually portrayed as evil or stupid. She doesn't have to do anything to deserve this treatment. She's an impossibly good person because the author says she is. This is literally how writers want the audience to feel about strong female characters. This is the implicit authorial intent I was talking about earlier. Even if a strong female trope's actions or personality don't always match this intent, you still know it's there because of moments of dissonance like the trench scene in Wonder Woman. The writer wants the audience to think the SFC is the greatest thing since sliced bread, that she can't do any wrong, that she will overcome any struggle easily. She is a perfect character cloaked in minor flaws that give the illusion of nuance and depth, but really don't add anything to the story, to her themes, and don't hinder her character all that much. These are known as informed flaws in the character trope corner of the interwebs. While we're on the Wonder Woman jet stream, I want to point out something. Strong female characters aren't always unlikable. They are influenced by the Mary Sue, a trope that is mostly inoffensive. People generally find Wonder Woman more likable than Captain Marvel. She doesn't have some of the more unlikable common traits of the strong female trope, like arrogance or male-oriented condescension, two traits that the Mary Sue doesn't typically have. So the arrogance and those toxic traits are an add-on of the strong female trope. The Mary Sue trope is to the strong female character what Lord of the Rings is to modern fantasy. A precursor, an inspiration, a trailblazer. I don't think the SFC would exist without the Mary Sue, but they aren't the exact same. The SFC is far more action-focused than the Mary Sue. If the Mary Sue is an idealized version of a traditionally feminine but also somewhat independent woman, then the strong female character is the feminine version of the idealized traditionally masculine man. Which brings me to the next definitive trait. She is Bond. Jane Bond. That was bad. Classic James Bond was a paragon of masculinity for a long time and still is in some corners of society. He is the greatest spy ever to exist, a combination of suaveness and physical prowess. He is dominant, aggressive, doesn't often get emotionally vulnerable if at all, and of course treats women like objects. Classic, am I right? He's smart, sometimes the smartest. He has the arrogance to match all of his greatness. This description can just as easily apply to the SFC, except in her case, she treats men like idiots. She might cry a little more too, but not by much. I said before that the SFC is the feminine version of the idealized traditionally masculine man. She is the female version of James Bond. Traits like aggression and arrogance are often seen as hypermasculine and even toxic in men. And it's no different with strong female characters, even if the writers want the audience to believe otherwise. Arrogance and aggression aren't likable traits in most circumstances, no matter the gender. The strong female character isn't the female version of your average male action hero. James Bond has that specific brand of intelligence, broad skill set, arrogance, and physical ability that the strong female character is known for. She's not going to be the female version of a dumb male action hero. One could even say that James Bond is a male Mary Sue. However, the Mary Sue is not typically masculinized to the degree SFCs are. When I say masculinized, I mean in the traditional and even stereotypical way. Basically, take a male action hero who is also intelligent and good at pretty much everything, and then make him a girl. But it's not just the trope's description itself that the SFC has in common with James Bond, but also how the trope is viewed. James Bond and his ilk were once the pinnacle of masculinity, but are now seen in more of a negative light, mostly due to the classic Bond trope's mistreatment of women and the lack of emotional vulnerability. Two things the society has come to agree aren't healthy. There's nothing wrong with a badass, just don't make him misogynistic and maybe let him show an emotion other than anger once in a while. Likewise, the strong female character trope has taken on a negative connotation, and like Bond, the SFC is a product of its time and the contemporary social norms. But this doesn't change the fact that a lot of people see classic Bond types and the strong female character as ill depictions of male and female characters. There's nothing wrong about female action heroes as a concept, but when writers decide to model them after male action heroes that a lot of entertainment society decided weren't nuanced enough as characters and were sometimes even downright negative depictions of men, it's to be expected that not everyone will want to consume a story about that character. The cons of classic male action heroes don't just go away because they're in a female body. Reincarnation doesn't work like that, I think. I'm a Christian, I know more about resurrection. Stairway to Heaven, she is on a positive trajectory. In fiction, positive arcs are when a character becomes better by the end. Negative arcs are when a character becomes worse by the end. Strong female characters tend to be static characters, meaning they don't change significantly by the end of the story. However, any change they do undergo and any arc they might have will be a positive one. This doesn't mean she doesn't experience bad things, but those things will never result in a negative change. The strong female character will never fail so miserably that she starts down a negative arc. She is too smart and talented and good for that, are you kidding me? Characters don't need to have negative arcs to be well written or realistic, but there needs to be the threat of a negative arc. It provides stakes and tension for the character and story, but it also adds a realistic layer, because I think everyone is one truly awful thing happening away from joining the dark side. No, just me? Okay. SFCs don't get this layer of depth because it doesn't align with who she is, or at the very least who the writers want her to be. She's the heart of gold, the hero, the savior. She isn't flawless in any meaningful way, and she's the paragon of humanity. Even if there is a narrative threat of a negative arc, it doesn't feel like there's a threat, because we know as an audience the writers aren't going to let their strong female character be corrupted. Women are incorruptible, as you know. There could be many narrative reasons as to why the SFC could start a negative arc, but she won't, because she's not supposed to. These reasons kind of operate how informed flaws operate, meaning they give the illusion of a threat, but aren't intended to result in a negative arc. It leaves the entire presence of her character feeling tensionless and without stakes. The strong female character does not lose any major fights. The minor fights she might lose will only make her stronger. She is awesome in the beginning and will be even more awesome at the end. Her awesomeness will never be threatened. She's a paragon, an idol, a god, and gods don't bleed. She is a good fighter. The strong female character is good at many and most things, but the one thing she will without a doubt be good at is fighting. No matter how green she is at the start of a movie, by the end, you better believe she'll be kicking butt. If there is an opportunity for a physical fight in her story, she will not only survive it relatively unscathed, but she will be the MVP, or at the very least, a useful participant. So she's not always gonna be Crosby, but sometimes, she'll be Ovechkin. I should cut that out. Hello out there. We're on the air. It's hockey night tonight. Tension grows, the whistle blows, and a puck goes down the ice. Fighting prowess is one of the most distinguishable traits of a strong female character. SFCs never need much time to hone their skills. They will either be good at fighting right off the bat, or their learning curve will be flat as Saskatchewan. Whether they have superpowers or not, they will be able to take down foes much larger and or more skilled than them, whether it's a man or another woman. Their skill doesn't typically match the amount of time and effort they have put into training, and their victories don't often match the amount of effort they put into the fight. They don't strain themselves too hard, and if they do, there's no tension, because like I said previously, there aren't really many stakes when it comes to SFCs because they will win. They will defeat the bad guy. The strong female character can be a lot of things, but 98% of the time, character defined by her gender in almost every way. It defines her relationship with characters of the opposite gender, her relationship with the narrative, and her relationship with the audience. The SFC is meant to be loved and looked up to by the audience. It could be argued that some female characters are now written to piss off the audience members who dislike them, but that's an aside. The strong female character is meant to be the pinnacle of physicality and skill, who is the best of their gender and better than characters of the opposite gender. She is more skilled, more moral, and smarter than men, and will look down on them for those reasons. The SFC is a close to perfect character, so she won't ever be at risk of falling into a negative character arc. No, she is near flawless, so she must always rise again. The strong female character hero can never be corrupted because within the confines of the trope, women are incorruptible, or at the very least, always redeemable. And of course, the strong female character is a prodigy at fighting because women are good at everything. She can beat up people well beyond what she should be capable of, will always triumph beyond a few smaller failures. These last two factors are more implicit than the first two. It's not always explicitly part of the story that a strong female character will always come out on top or that she's only this good at fighting because she's a woman. But the audience can certainly tell when it's an implicit message the writers are injecting into the story. Partly because of the external factors like the culture around strong female characters, but also because the implicit intention is intrinsic to the trope. Say that 5 times fast. She's a statement character. That's the secret fifth factor. The strong female character trope is a message, which is probably why she's more annoying than a lot of other tropes. That is the strong female character as she currently is on a wide scale. But who is she supposed to be? I will be the first to tell you that the strong female character originally meant a good female character. She didn't have to be physically strong or be adept with her fists. She just needed to have strong writing and a realistic personality that went beyond, I'm pretty and that's all that matters. The strong female character was intended to open the boxes female characters had been written into for centuries. The damsel in distress, the trophy, the pretty girl. For a long time, if a female character had any agency, she was probably evil, and that's why I'll never have agency. The strong female character was created as writers gave female characters more agency, more power, and better writing. Decades later, however, it has become something else entirely, transforming into a trope associated with insufferable and poorly written female characters that Western audiences, especially fans of action-heavy genres like fantasy, can't seem to escape. The trope favors fighting prowess over personality, victories over character development, an authorial message over good writing. What began as writers writing outside the box has become a box itself, once again damaging the craft of creating female characters. It's a vicious cycle, kids. We must break it. Badass female characters are often roped into the strong female character trope, but as I said before, they aren't the same. In my Yuna video, I called them adjacent strong female characters, but I want to distance them even further from the trope. So in this video, I'm going to call them badass female characters. They often share a lot of the same traits like fighting ability, arrogance, intelligence, and so on, and this unfortunately associates them with the trope. However, there is a line, and while I'm sure you expect me to say the line is good writing, it's actually not, at least not in my opinion. Poorly written female character is not automatically a strong female trope, just as a badass one isn't. What is far more important in distinguishing a badass from a strong female trope is if they are defined by their gender, specifically in the ways I talked about in part 1. That's the line. Just because a female character is poorly written and or annoying doesn't mean she's a strong female trope. The 5 factors I discussed in part 1 helped define what a strong female character is, but that's not always enough to differentiate them from the badass. Sometimes the line is really blurred, or maybe I need to put my glasses on. So what differentiates a badass female character from a strong female character? It's all about gender. I'm not saying gender can't influence traits. That's unrealistic, especially when I'm advocating against female characters who can physically do things well beyond the scope of possibility in their given world or without a good reason for it. Rather, does gender influence traits in the specific way that it influences the strong female character's traits? Is the only reason a character can do something because she's a girl and thus she can do anything? Take Violet Evergarden. Her story isn't explicitly a fantasy. There is no evidence of magic or superpowers, and yet she is a child who can take down battalions. Yes, she was raised to be a weapon, but there are limits to skill and experience. I'd say this if she were a boy too, by the way. I'd say it if she was a grown man. This insanely unrealistic physical ability is in line with what you would see out of a strong female character, and is something I should be annoyed by. But in Violet's case, this trait is not influenced by her gender. She isn't an unrealistically good fighter because she's a hashtag girl boss. Remember, you can tell when the writer intends for that to be the case. Violet is an unrealistically good fighter because it serves her themes. The entire point of her story is that she was raised to be a weapon and must learn to be a human. If a strong female character trait is influenced by something other than the fact she's a girl, like themes, narrative, etc., then she might just be a badass, not a strong female trope. But Cassidy, Captain Marvel, has themes about misogyny, and yet you call her a strong female character, so you must be talking out of your ass. Captain Marvel doesn't have much character beyond her history of misogyny. Physical capabilities, superpowers, general moral superiority, and banter. The fact that she's an overpowered female superhero is her personality. A story has 4 different aspects: plot, world building, character, and themes. You can throw in authorial intent as a 5th aspect. Each of these aspects will define a character by certain things. Take Mizu. The world building defines her by her gender, because she lives in the 1600s, and that's never a good time to be a woman. The plot defines her by her physical prowess, because she needs to hack and slash her way to her end goal, and the themes define her by her vengeance. Defining a character solely by any one trait, arbitrary or not, doesn't typically lead to the most well-developed characters. Even Mizu, whose story revolves around her vengeance, isn't solely defined by it. She has other aspects, other things that define her, and yes, her gender is one of them, but it's not the only one and not the paramount one. This also applies to gentle female characters, which I talked about in my Yuna video. If a gentle female character is defined solely by her gentleness, then that's not really a well-developed character either. Beyond all that, just because a character is defined by something doesn't mean that's their entire personality and present in every single interaction. Mizu's revenge, which is really her defining trait, isn't the topic or present in every single scene. She exists beyond it while still being the core of her character. Captain Marvel's gender, and specifically how the writers want the audience to feel about her gender and how she's mistreated because of it, is 90% of her personality and really the driving factor behind her character, just like it is with the trope itself. It is the point of her character. Misogyny, sarcasm, and banter don't equal depth. The strong female character is kind of like a platypus. It's a mammal, but ignores the conventions of being a mammal. She likes to ignore the context of gender by being modeled after male action heroes in both personality and physical capability. I can give leeway to the personality because it turns out that not all women are submissive and quiet. Who'd have thought? Although I won't give leeway to assigning what some see as toxic male traits to female characters and calling it strong. That's just stupid. The strong female character is also very guilty of forcing gender to be context. It often affects how they interact with men, typically condescendingly or morally superior. The strong female character wants all the benefits of being a dude, but also wants to be praised for being a woman. Make it make sense. The strong female character will shove 1 or 2 instances of misogyny into the plot so that their badassery, victories, and even sometimes their perceived victimhood feels justified, but somehow it never really does, because forced context doesn't feel organic. The intention of the writers to make the strong female character strong and independent and #girl boss is inseparable from the trope. She is written through the lens of her gender whether the story demands it or not. Forced context comes down to the quality of the writing and authorial intent. Captain Marvel has a reason for there to be sexism in the world building. Carol Danvers is a woman in the military in the 80s. Makes sense. But it still feels so forced, and I think it's because A, the writing isn't good, and B, the writers intended for Captain Marvel to be this girl boss who breaks the chains of sexism. Implicit intention can affect how a story feels just as much as explicit intention, and in Captain Marvel's case, the implicit intention of the writers make the context for some of Carol's personality feel inorganic and forced. It's kind of like when you're a teenager and you decide on your own that you're gonna do the dishes, but then your dad tells you to do the dishes because obviously he didn't know you were literally just going to do them, but now you don't want to because he told you to. When writers tell us we are morally obligated to feel bad for and root for a strong female character because she's a woman and she's overcome so much because she's a woman, well, I don't want to. Don't tell me what to do. Characters like Mizu and Akemi from Blue Eye Samurai have narrative reasons for why their gender affects their lives. There is extreme discrimination against women in their country. It gives context to their relationship with the world, themselves, and other characters, especially male ones. And it doesn't feel forced, partly because the writing is astronomically better than in most stories with the strong female trope, but also because it's fleshed out enough that it feels natural and real. Gender doesn't completely take over the story, and it's not forced to be the context for everything. Even though it's a massive part of the story, it feels contained to specific parts of it, bleeding realistically into other facets it should affect and not touching facets it shouldn't. Gender does affect Mizu's relationships, but it doesn't affect her core theme of revenge. She wants to kill the white men not because she was born a woman, but because she was born at all. And this brings me to the next difference. Bear with me on this one because it's mostly vibes. The strong female character trope is a try-hard trope in my opinion. It feels like writers are trying their hardest to make the character badass, cool, intelligent, perfect in every way. Like I said, she's a Mary Sue. The trope itself is trying to be something. A message, a paradigm shift, a middle finger to people it annoys. Which hurts my feelings, by the way. Sticks and stones. This tryhardness is part of the trope itself. I kind of feel this way about John Wick types too. Those male characters who are one-man armies and can keep going after falling down a flight of stairs for 7 minutes. It's kind of tryhard. It feels inorganic. I'm gonna get so much hate for that if people watch this. Now, badass female characters aren't all well written, so sometimes they don't work well as characters either. But I think because badass female characters aren't typically demanding you perceive them a certain way, then we can give them more leeway. A badass female character isn't inherently a try-hard like a strong female character. Some of them are, of course, but it's not an inherent part of the trope. The writers aren't trying to get you to see Katniss or Mizu as strong independent women. That's a side effect of their personality and role within the story. The strong female trope is trying to be something it's not. A male action hero who, specifically, is better than other male action heroes. The trope was modeled after the male action hero, and to this day, it strives to be better than them and thinks it already is. This does not feel natural because it's not. The SFC is taking a trope, changing really nothing about it except for the gender and the message of the character, and pretending it's better than it. The SFC indulges in all the pros of the male action hero, but also all the cons and pretends it's improved upon the original. It takes the traits that some have labeled as toxic masculinity and twists them into female empowerment. And writers demand we see the strong female character as the paragon of heroes, when they have stepped on the heads of male action heroes and badass female characters to get to the top of Babel, a tower that should never exist in the first place because archetypes and tropes do not trump each other. Rather, it's the skill of the writer that determines their place in the grand tier list of characters. That, my friends, is the definition of forced. In the unit video, I said that it was hard to separate adjacent strong female characters like Mizu and Vi and Korra from strong female characters because they share a lot of the same traits, as some people thought I was conflating the two. And as you might imagine, saying Vi is anything like a strong female character is a sin. The adjacent strong female character is not the strong female character, but is fated to be associated with it. If a female character is good at fighting or arrogant, she will be put into the strong female character box, even if the reasons for those traits have nothing to do with her gender. No matter how well written they are, it is hard to see them as separate because modern Western media has saturated the fantasy and action genres with the strong female character trope, especially the big franchises. So I think whether we realize it or not, a lot of people will view female characters through that lens, especially fans of combat-heavy genres. It's easy to separate gentler female characters from the trope because they are often missing vital aspects of the trope. But it's difficult to divorce badass female characters from the strong female character trope because they are similar in a lot of ways. They might not be defined by their gender like the trope is, but they share enough traits that no matter the reason behind them, they can be mistaken for the trope. Mizu is not a strong female character trope by any means, but it's harder to separate her from the trope because she's a badass. She can take down a bunch of warriors by herself and can be condescending to men. All of these traits have good and realistic reasons for being there, i.e. she trained for years and lives in a very sexist world. But sometimes context can't sever the association. It's kind of like how female characters who don't fight can sometimes be associated with the damsel in distress, even if they're not. The intention behind a character is extremely important in influencing how the audience will perceive that character. I don't want badass female characters to be associated with such a frustrating and degrading trope, just as I don't want gentle female characters to be associated with the damsel in distress. I don't want female characters to be defined by their gender at all, unless there is an actual good reason for it. I want diversity in female characterization so we can have a Mizu without associating her with the Rings of Power Galadriel. I want the strong female character trope to die a quick death, not out of mercy for them, but mercy for me, who doesn't want to suffer them anymore. people seem to either overestimate or underestimate women's capacity for strength, battle prowess, and athleticism. Now, I am not an expert by any means, but women can train to become naturally strong and good fighters. Martial arts and combat sports have had women's divisions for years. It's true the strongest man will always be stronger than the strongest woman. That doesn't mean, however, that women cannot train their strength, physical abilities, and battle prowess into something impressive. I mean, competitive female weightlifters can lift multiple times their body weight, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. There is a cycle of underestimation and overestimation when it comes to how women's physical capabilities are portrayed in fiction. You can literally see it embodied in character trends. The damsels in distress were almost always physically useless. The action girls were very capable. The wise woman is usually more magically inclined, so she can be useful without being strong. That's actually a very common thing to see in fantasy. Women commonly have magical powers and men commonly have physical powers, like Wanda and Pietro Maximoff. And last but not least, the strong female character is beyond capable to the point where everyone else becomes useless. It's important to note that while a show like Vikings is unrealistic in the number of shield maidens within a Viking army, they did exist. Women warriors existed across many cultures. I mean, even Tolkien wrote Eowyn, a shield maiden, and he obviously wasn't one to just have a female warrior, or even a female character, out of obligation or social commentary. While an ancient army without women at all is more realistic than an ancient army with thousands of women, an army with a Mizu or an Eowyn or even a score of them isn't unrealistic. Two very important factors in what makes a female warrior feel realistic or not is one, her literal body, and two, her training. Mizu is as tall as your average man in Japan. The animators did say they took liberties with the height of the characters. Taigen, for example, is larger than your average Japanese man. She's definitely muscular and has trained her body and swordsmanship since she was a child. If you want to nitpick, I will say that the character designers could have made her maybe a bit more muscular, but I think her training speaks for itself. When Mizu carries Taigen while scaling the wall of Fowler's castle, some people might think, yeah, right. For a lot of characters, yeah, I'd agree, but not for Mizu. The show has established that Mizu is very strong and well trained. In this scene, she is likely tapping into hysterical strength, which is a real thing even if you can't actually lift a car with it. Taigen is a bit taller than Mizu and more muscular, but let's say he's a middleweight. He's likely less or at least around 200 pounds, a weight not at all impossible to carry for a woman who's trained as much as Mizu has. When you combine her strength with adrenaline and very impressive willpower, I don't think this is unrealistic. I mean, heck, sometimes I lift things well beyond my normal capacity out of pure stubbornness. I don't even need my life to be threatened, just my pride. Mizu is what the strong female character was originally intended for, breaking the boxes female characters were forced into, and is the pinnacle of what the strong female character trope wants to be. She is a good character. Her personality and themes in an arc are so well crafted I'm jealous. She is not put into the box of any one-dimensional and diminishing trope from the past. While she is adjacent to the SFC, she is still noticeably different. Mizu is not the strongest person in every fight. She doesn't really overpower many people. She outskills them, outthinks them, and outwills them. And anyone who's lifted weights to failure knows that sometimes it comes down to pure determination. It's also important to note that almost every fight Mizu has in the show falls under one of three categories. She can predict her opponent's movements, their fight is bound by certain rules like the Samurai's Code, or she can just outfight them. But then comes Fowler, a hulking mass of an Irishman and the main antagonist. These three categories get thrown out the window. He is not a Japanese trained fighter or swordsman, so she cannot really predict his movements. He isn't bound by rules like Taigen, so he will fight dirty, and he can outfight pretty much everyone, not because he's more skilled, but because he's a giant compared to everyone else. So while Mizu can hold her own against a swordsman with her sword or a bunch of clawed up warriors with a longer range weapon, she struggles against Fowler, because as soon as he gets his hands on his opponent, he is going to beat the crap out of them. This isn't to say he's more skilled with the sword than Mizu or Taigen, but he just uses brute strength to knock the sword out of his opponent's hand, then proceeds to ragdoll them. Don't really need to be skilled with the sword to do that. When Fowler gets Mizu where he wants her, Mizu can't outskill her way out. No, she needs to match Fowler and fight dirty. So she does the womanly thing and kicks him where no man wants to be kicked. Mizu uses this opportunity to escape his grasp and stick a dagger to his throat. Pretty much game over at that point. But let's say I'm completely wrong about Mizu's accuracy. It still works as a great portrayal of a female warrior because of the focus the show puts on making sure the fights feel realistic, and Mizu seems like she should be capable of everything she does. This goes for male warrior characters as well. She struggles, she trains, she fights, and sometimes she doesn't win, but when she does, it feels earned. You can bend reality a bit, male or female, as long as the victory feels earned. But Mizu is more than just what the paragon of a strong female trope should be. She's also simply a strong female character in the sense she is incredibly well written. Just like Violet Evergarden's physical capabilities were used to better illustrate the themes of her character, Mizu's physical capabilities are used to strengthen her revenge theme. Her all-consuming revenge is turning her into a monster. The entire show she's compared to a demon because of her blue eyes, but then it's because she's good at fighting. Then it's because she can kill so many in the name of vengeance, including innocent people. So while the original reason she's ostracized is because of the monster she is sworn to kill, she becomes ostracized because her need to kill the monster turns her into a monster. A character's physical capabilities don't have to be part of their themes, but they are a huge part of Mizu's character because they are incorporated into her themes and how she interacts with the setting and other characters. Her entire purpose for living is to kill her possible fathers, so of course a cornerstone of her identity would be her physical abilities. While Mizu must fight the constraints of her gender, she has worked her butt off to make sure her gender is no longer what holds her back. The only thing that holds her back now is either her inability to defeat her opponent, which she overcomes, or her morals getting in the way of her murderous revenge quest. Hate it when that happens. Mizu's story is not one of a woman becoming the strongest warrior in the world who can defeat anyone. It's not even out of a desire to defend herself in a world that takes advantage of women. Her story is of a person consumed by revenge and becoming strong and skilled so she can enact that revenge. The only reason she trains is so she can kill. And just as she struggles when she fights, she struggles with her vengeance. And that is really what the core idea of her character is. A person torn between revenge and letting go. A strong female character's combat prowess and gender will almost always be at the center of the character, but with Mizu, her abilities and gender serve to highlight and strengthen what truly defines her character. Writers shouldn't stop writing physically strong female characters, but they need to be smart in how they portray them. Because women are typically at a disadvantage when fighting a man, writers can make fights more creative, more brutal, employ dirtier tactics, and so on. Mizu has to get creative to defeat some of her opponents, and it makes the fights more interesting to watch, but also feel more real. I love that she turned her sword into a long-range weapon when she was fighting the Claw Army. That was smart and effective. The female character's struggle either makes her loss hit even harder or makes her victory feel earned. And her victory, let's be real, is probably more impressive than a man defeating a man. And that's part of the issue. It doesn't feel like the strong female character trope earns any victory, whether it be against man, woman, alien, whatever. It's kind of like when a character goes Super Saiyan or Megazord or Avatar mode. They tap into this crazy power that is nearly unbeatable in most circumstances. The stakes are cheapened and the victory doesn't feel as earned because the character basically pulled out their get out of jail free card. The strong female character trope is obviously going to win in the end and is probably overpowered in some capacity, superpowers or not, so there aren't really stakes to her fights and it doesn't feel like she earns her victories. But the well-written, badass female character, who struggles to win but manages to do so, feels like watching the underdog come out on top, whether or not she's presented as weaker or stronger than her opponent. It evokes that feeling because she earned her victory.
My empire of dirt.
Just like men and women can't be put into one box, neither can male and female characters. The issue around the strong female character trope is a bit more nuanced than simply strong female character bad. The trope has become frustrating and tired for a lot of people, but the concept of a physically strong or self-reliant female character isn't bad. Like everything else in entertainment, it's how the concept is executed. Just stop defining characters by their gender. Really, don't define them by any arbitrary trait, unless there's a narrative reason you can pull it off, etc., etc. Writers act like because the character is a woman, that means they are better than everyone and don't fail or change in any meaningful way. While this is in response to how women were written decades ago, it isn't a recipe for likable characters. The strong female character trope has a lot of negative association, yet writers seem to pretend it doesn't, or are trying to force audiences to see it through a positive lens. Even if a person doesn't have strong opinions one way or the other, it's hard to divorce the trope from the negative press surrounding it. Even if a story is set in a world where women are mistreated, that doesn't mean that should be the crux of their character. Even in a story like Blue Eye Samurai, where a huge theme is gender inequality, there is more to the female characters than just their gender. And it goes both ways. Most of the male characters in the show are more than the power they hold over women. One of the main reasons people love characters like Mizu and Vi and not characters like Captain Marvel is because Mizu and Vi actually struggle. They are not perfect, they are not self-righteous, they are flawed, they feel real. The strong female character trope doesn't struggle in any meaningful way and is partly defined by their ability to get out of every struggle victoriously. Good characters, physically strong or not, are in part defined by their struggles, how they overcome them, and who they are on the other side. The Greeks figured that out when they decided their gods and heroes would have flaws, and it hasn't changed. People want to relate to characters, and the strong female character trope is not only unrelatable, it's annoying. And let's be real, the worst thing a character could be is annoying. Strong female characters were never supposed to be what they have become. A way for female characters to be fleshed out, self-reliant, and powerful in their own right has become a way to shove a message down the audience's throat, whether the audience agrees with it or not, and a way to shove stories off cliffs, whether the story itself is good or not. The original concept of the strong female character has been split in two, with one half succeeding to dominate Western entertainment and force people to look elsewhere for good female characters, and the other half succeeding in the intended purpose but fated to be associated with their more annoying counterpart. Mizu is proof that physically strong female characters can work if written well. I mean, that's what the quality of most things in fiction comes down to, good writing. A gentle female character who is poorly written is no better than the strong female character trope. While Mizu doesn't stand out in the grand scope of fantasy and action-heavy genres as much as a gentler female character would due to traits like her fighting ability, she stands out amongst the girl bosses and strong female characters because she's just so well written. She is the best a female warrior can be, with realistic abilities, human flaws, moments of failure, and she actually struggles. Mizu is one of the best written characters, male or female, I've come across, and it feels a bit vindicating that she's a skilled warrior, because a lot of people like to clown on female characters who fight whether they're well written or not. Just because a woman can fight well, has muscles, or can defeat a man doesn't mean she's a strong female character trope, and Mizu is proof of that. Blue Eye Samurai definitely has a message it wants to get across. That's fine. Stories can have messages, that's one of the functions of themes. That's one of the functions of stories. But the difference between Blue Eye Samurai and a story like Captain Marvel is that Blue Eye Samurai puts the art before the message. Art can be a powerful way to evoke change on an individual or cultural level, but it only works if the art is the main point and the message is secondary. I mean, that's why so much religious entertainment sucks. While Captain Marvel pummeled gender equality into our faces, Blue Eye Samurai quietly stabs us in the side with it. I said earlier that bad writing doesn't define a strong female character, but maybe it does. Maybe defining a character by their gender is bad writing. Maybe putting the message before the art is bad writing. Maybe everything truly does boil down to bad writing. Good writing could have made Captain Marvel a better character, and bad writing could have turned Yuna into a pushover and Mizu into a strong female character trope. Maybe what makes a character good or bad isn't the trope, but the writer who creates them. This could have been a shorter video, I guess. If you watched my gentle female characters video and thought I was dunking on characters like Mizu, I hope I redeemed myself. If you watched and liked my gentle female characters video but don't like what I had to say in this one, I can't keep doing this, man, I gotta break the cycle. Okay, I'm done ranting now. I hope you enjoyed this video. I definitely enjoyed making it. And please remember, this is all my opinion and I don't want anyone to take it as me thinking I know better. I don't. I'm just a girl who watches stuff and wants to talk about it. I'm also a girl who writes sometimes, so if you want to check out my books, there is a link in the description. If this video does well, like my Yuna video did, then I can't wait and I'm also a little scared to read the comments. If this video doesn't do well, then that's okay, I wanted to make it anyways. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, if you're ever in a bind, fight dirty. It's the feminine thing to do.